All right, so I'm in the final step of building this whale suit, and that is doing some of the final cleanup and also doing some final gluing where I find any places that might have like a loose edge that need to be glued down. So my setup is I'm outside. I've got a fan blowing, so I'm not breathing the acetone fumes. I have some Q-tips. I've also got some paper towels, and if I need to use the paper towels, I have some butyl gloves, which are right here. Butyl are the only gloves that will protect your hands from acetone. So they're about 20 bucks, but they're well worth it if you're doing a lot of crafting. So this is if I soak a paper towel in acetone to protect my hands from it. The Q-tips aren't quite as bad because I can just put it on the end. And actually, this can is down far enough where I can just leave it sort of on its end and dip that in there and get some acetone. So I'm going to start out without gloves because I'm just going to use the Q-tips. But we've got some glue residue here where I put the patch on and I inflated a little bit too early, so it stretched the body and left some glue residue because the body kind of stretched. So when I wipe the glue off with one Q-tip, if there's a lot of glue, I'll usually change Q-tips. If there's just a little bit, I might dip it a couple more times, but you don't want to keep using it for too long because you'll just smear the glue. And usually what I'll want to do is get enough of the bulk glue off, and then I'll come back with a clean Q-tip and do some of the final wiping to get it to look nice. You don't want to push too hard because you will leave abrasions in the material that will make the material look dull. This is especially true on shiny and clear material. This matte material that the whale is made out of is a little bit more forgiving, which is nice. But you can avoid leaving marks by just gently brushing and using a lot of acetone. But the key also is to get all the glue off. If you leave glue, then anywhere that spot touches in the future may bond with other vinyl. So it's a good idea to try to get all the glue off. If you're going to do this, spend the time to get all of the glue residue off. Don't just do it part way, because then that can be a real mess if it gets stuck. And this mess right here that I'm cleaning up, that was really my own fault because I could have waited a little bit longer to inflate it and it would have been a lot better off. And I would have saved myself all this cleanup. So I'm just going to keep at this, keep changing Q-tips until I'm happy with this, and then I'll move on to the zipper. All right, so I got all my glue off, but I'm not entirely happy with some of these marks, so I'm going to attempt to try to use a paper towel, and some butyl gloves. One thing I'll mention too, down here below, I don't know if you can really tell, but I have a paint canvas, because you don't want to work on vinyl against concrete. It's going to scrape. You'll probably get some holes. So I have a nice paint canvas that I throw down so that it doesn't get scraped up. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put some of these gloves on. And then I'm going to see if I can't get rid of some of these marks using a little bit more saturation on a paper towel. So I'm going to take this and kind of saturate it. Got to be a little bit careful though, because I don't want to drip it on this white. So I might have actually got a little bit too much on it. I'm going to kind of fling it off a little bit. Just very gentle brushing is the idea. And it's got to be saturated. Once it starts to dry, you want to add a little bit more acetone to it. And this kind of smooths out the finish. And if it's still not quite to your liking, you can do a little bit more polishing using some toothpaste. And that'll help kind of really do some fine polishing. Normally you don't have to do that on this matte material. That's more of a thing that you do on shiny material. So that's coming together nicely. It just takes a little bit of time and just very, very little pressure. And so we'll see how that is in a little bit. Next, I'm going to move on to the zipper. All right, so this has come together pretty well. I'm going to move on to doing the zipper. And there's a couple things I'm going to do. I'm going to not only do some cleanup, but I'm going to also add some glue if there's any loose spots. So for example, I can tell that there is kind of a loose spot here. So I've got a blue syringe needle, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of poke along and add in glue where it's needed, because I want the edges to be glued down nice. When you have loose edges, they can get caught and then peeled up over time. So you want them to be glued all the way to the edge. Sometimes you have to go back and forth between doing a little bit of this, doing a little bit of cleanup, because sometimes the cleanup can actually release some of your edges when you use acetone. So you might want to kind of check it again after you do your cleanup to make sure that no more edges are released. This final work is really what makes a good product. Having the edges all nice and glued down and having it clean, it's what really stands one person's crafting apart from another. There's lots of sloppy crafters out there, and it really shows when you look at the way they do their cleanup and their edges. And in the beginning, when nobody else was doing this, people would accept, subpar work. But after more and more people are doing this, and people can see that, they can get nice, finished quality or poorly finished quality, eventually they're going to start requesting certain crafters to do their work. That's already happening. We do get, some people that come in and they say, I only want, this crafter to work on my stuff. So we got to try to satisfy everybody and try to, keep all of the work to the highest quality as we can. And this little bit of final stuff really doesn't take that much extra time, and it's worth it. So there is glue up to this point. So now let's look at doing a little bit of cleanup. The cleanup's actually fairly easy. Using a Q-tip, you can easily get along this track. Change to another Q-tip. Fairly easy cleanup job here. And it really makes a huge difference. It looks so much cleaner, so much nicer. This is the part that everybody really notices because it's where you get in and out. So spending a little bit of extra time to make this look nice really makes a good impression. It's kind of like cleaning the baseboards in your house. I don't know, it's just like, it's a defining line, and it really catches your eye, especially if it looks nice. You can see it, the cleanup part actually is pretty quick. So if you can be a little more mindful, which I should have done myself on gluing my edges down when I was doing the crafting, then I wouldn't have had to do so much work adding glue. So just barely brushing so that it doesn't leave marks. That's the idea. So I'm going to continue the same process all the way around. Now, one thing I should point out, I stopped the video right before I got to the white spot. You want to be real careful when you're doing this cleanup not to touch the white. If you need to, you can put tape down, or just be real careful. You don't want to rub the Q-tip against the white because the white will come off and will show black. It's just paint, and you can get close to the edge, just don't touch the Q-tip to the white. So just go a little bit slower when you're in this area where there's print. Of course, if it's a different suit that you're working on besides a whale, same concept. You just have to see what is print and what is the actual color of the material. Of course, it's easy to tell what the actual color of the material is because when you cut into the suit, or when you cut into the toy to make the suit, on the back side you can see the color of the material. So from us working on this, we know that the material is black, so this white area is just printed on. So we just need to be real careful when we work around that white area. Now, if you're working on another toy, the printed color may be something different. So you just take the same philosophy and use that. Now, I should also mention, if you do actually get glue on the white part, don't try to clean it off with the acetone, because of course it's going to wipe it off. What you can do is first try some alcohol to clean it. Or you can also try to take tape and peel and stick over and over and over again. The best tape is actually Gorilla Tape. If you don't have Gorilla Tape, you can use some of the blue painter's tape. You can use packing tape. You can try different tapes. You can peel and stick over and over again and see if that gets it off. You can try rubbing alcohol, or I should say isopropyl alcohol. If that doesn't work, you can try some Goo Gone lightly. Be real careful though. The glue. Take a look at the paper towel that you're using to wipe with. If the white stuff is coming off on it, stop, because Goo Gone will, it does have some solvent in it, and it will take off some of the print. It can help as long as you don't push real hard and scrub real hard. Now we also want to look at other areas that we glued. For example, up here where the blowhole is, we want to inspect, see if there's any glue residue that needs to be cleaned up here. And I do see a little bit, looks like that got right here. So I'll clean that up. And kind of look at, you know, around this area, see if there's anything that's really obvious that needs to be cleaned up. I don't need to get down in there too much, but if there's some residue that you can see around the edge, looks like everything else is pretty clean. You can also check and see if any of the areas that you did the reinforcement on need cleanup, if there's any glue showing. Of course, also down where we did our patch, if I turn this around, we want to look up here and see how this looks. This won't really stand out as much on the white, but if you see anything that really needs to be cleaned up, which I don't really see any glue there, and then just kind of give an overall look to see if there's any glue. If you see something, don't assume it's glue. It might just be something else. It might be dirt. I'd usually try to clean it off with some alcohol, or just kind of use my fingernail and scrape it. There's a patch here on this whale that I'll check out. This was actually because the whale was used, or was going to be used originally as a whale toy with pleasure tube on the back, and one of the crafters had already started the process of cutting into it. I didn't realize that before using this as a whale suit, so I had to patch this. Of course, you won't have that unless you, for some reason, need to get access in. If you ever do need access in, I would recommend doing it on the inside of the whale so that you don't have a patch like this on the outside. But the idea is just to check everywhere and see if there's anywhere else that needs cleanup. And then I would also look at the inside. Even though you don't see the inside, you don't have to probably be quite as meticulous on the inside unless you want to be. But if there are some really ugly glue residue marks around the zipper on the inside of the suit, you might do a little bit of cleanup on those. So there's one other thing I'm going to point out that I noticed that I needed to fix on this, and that is right here. I have this little dimple. This really needs to be fixed because that can tear eventually. If you have dimples like this, it's basically some stuff that's stuck together that's not supposed to be. What you can do is you can first try to, you can see it's basically it's stuck between here and here. You can grab a hold of it and see if it'll release. Oh, that was fairly easy. It released. If it doesn't, then what you need to do is deflate this. Don't ever do it while it's inflated. And then use a blow dryer while it's deflated. Heat it up and very carefully just kind of pull it apart. You don't want to do it with too much force because it'll distort this and you'll end up having a weird little dimple much bigger than what I've got now. But the heat can really help. Looking in on the inside, there is a little bit of ugly glue residue here. I will warn you though, what you need to do if you're going to be flipping this thing inside and out, doing cleanup, everywhere that we touched with acetone needs to be powdered with either talcum powder or cornstarch. Because if I turn this thing inside out, everywhere that I had done cleanup around here has the tendency to fold over and stick to itself and bond. So you need a non-stick lubricant, and the easiest thing is cornstarch or talc powder. You powder it, turn it inside out, that way you know that it's not going to stick to itself. Then you can do the inside, then you can powder it and then turn it back right side out. The cornstarch really needs to stay on there for a few days. It'll eventually, the acetone will eventually evaporate, and then you won't have the problem with it sticking unless you don't get all the glue up. Like for example, right here, I was cleaning and it looks like there's a little bit more glue. That spot where the glue is will stick again, even after the acetone dries off. Even after you powder it 2 days later, if this folds over and touches itself, that right there could stick. So when you go to get rid of glue, you really need to make sure you get rid of all of it. Don't leave any of it behind because it will be prone to sticking to the material later on. So that's pretty much it. So the next few videos, I think what I'm going to do is I will do some of the optional things like the hidden eye holes and the access tunnels.